Okay, I've just done a quick test, and it appears to be a success. I'm recording this in the middle of the desert. When I started building out my truck, I realized that other than sleeping and cooking, it was difficult to do much else. So I set out to build out a new rig that I could record in, charge my drone, set up a laptop, and all the other comforts. Cooking, again, sleeping, and it's still a work in progress. But today, I'm going to record a video out here, not far off of Interstate 70. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy. I love you all. God bless, and welcome. So again, I'm out here in the desert, so quiet, and I already live in the desert, but what was once the distant town is now creeping in closer and closer. Seems like there's always noise now, always cars passing by. Once I started traveling, even lightly, I realized all my old favorite roads of travel were now everybody else's favorite roads of travel as well. Complete congestion, and either you retire to driving slow as the slowest driver, which is usually a trucker or some kind of RV pulling too many things, or you choose the speedy option, passing constantly. Where I live, it's a lot of big oil trucks, and they end up forming a non-connected train while going uphill, sometimes as slow as 20 miles an hour on the highway, and then speeding on the way down. Really unpleasant to be stuck on a highway in such a predicament. I don't blame the truckers. It's the state that issued all the permits allowing it, but not building an adequate road, creating a bottleneck. And the interest is never for the people. It's always for commerce. And I get it, as long as the goods flow. So here I am out in the desert. I didn't know what I would make a video on. And then I remember that I bought this thumb drive from Martin Liedke. Shout out to Martin. This is my first recording out here in the absolute middle of nowhere. So again, shout out to Martin, and thank you for the zip drive. I think I paid $40 for it, and this might have been a year ago. Looks like there's a lot of different topics. Let's have a look at Aether text. So these are typically associated with India, and we're told that they're just religious. But are they more than that? In this community, we believe so. And even swords, our Western type of metal swords, may have also been more of a tech than just some stupid steel-bashing implements. And we've seen old pictures of that, old depictions, I should say, where lightning is coming off of the swords, and they're having battles. Of course, bells both in our modern world and in the East. Here we see a bell and one of these vijaras, and we typically strike a bell to create the sound, but it could work the other way around. The actual ether or atmospheric conditions could produce resonance, perhaps at a certain time of day or night, and this could be used to produce a charge or some type of mechanical effect. For instance, we see mercury being employed in the old world as a tech, still being used as a tech today, and amplifying signals. And now, in conjunction with this natural resonance, we can begin to consider parts of the machine, just parts. So here again is some kind of bell tower tech. We can see how the energy will flow like a heat sink or a waveguide. Absolute technology, and to be told that it's religious is very dismissive, in my opinion. Now it may be used in ceremonies and has been carried on in a faint tradition. Perhaps its true purpose being kept for those in the know, and others just paraded around, chanting and dancing. And who knows, maybe the chants and the dances tell all about it. After all, in India, in their history, they have Vimanas. What we foolishly call UFOs is just part of their history, like as a matter of fact. In fact, everything we discuss on this channel is as a matter of fact in their history. That in the past, there were very advanced races, some like themselves and others not. And there were great battles. Eventually, they destroyed themselves and destroyed this place. So when we look around and talk about melted buildings, for example, it's very understood in their culture. If they see what we might call carved rocks that look like technology, it's very understood that this is from their past, these past races. Same with the Native Americans of North America when they talk about the Anasazi. With the exception that the Anasazi have this same role, really advanced science, tech, but only for a brief 200-year window. It's to say that what has or is occurring today, the taking over of America and the displacing of the native people, has happened before. It happened with a people they call the Anasazi, who for 200 years moved in, took slaves, had technology, and wiped themselves out. There they were again, alone in the desert. And a lot of these ruins are of the likes of the ruins of Chaco Canyon. In fact, very literally, that is said to be one of the sites. And look at it today. Yes, we have a history that it was ruined. They wiped themselves out, and the place is in absolute ruins. I don't care who you are, you can't fit stones like that. They were never fit like that. They're completely cooked out and warped, but still fitting together nicely after all that. And the Native Americans didn't want to dwell there in this cooked out, corrupted city. And it's the same thing with our cities. Our cities that we occupy, the ruins of a past people that they are hastily destroying in real time. Everywhere I go, the destruction of the old brick buildings. Yes, many of them have been deemed historical, and even that seems silly to me. Why historical? I mean, it's only 100, 200 years ago. It's not even that long ago. So this seems pretty random, and again, this is the first time I'm looking at this folder or file. Here's one titled 111 Old Tar Builds. It doesn't look like they're labeled, but we still get a pretty good feel of everything we're talking about. We see the tech up here, and this may have been sitting in this condition for 100 years. This metal tech. Down here it says Lyon. Maybe this is in France, I'm not sure. Or this could be somebody's name. Leon Eugene Sebastopol Cimetière. So it looks like a cemetery. And we see all these monuments over on the left here. And over here, Nob Hill, 1876. Nob Hill. Again, the same thing. Really beautiful Greco-Roman architecture in ruins. Just in ruins, inside and out. I don't even see windows in here. This is like the first picture snap of this city. And this cathedral over here, looking like one of the cathedrals in Prague. Beautiful building back here. I mean, everything is old world here. All brick, all completely built out, packed in as tightly as could be. Buildings touching each other. 1876. In my neighborhood, it can get minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit for several weeks at a time, and that will be my cue. Even in this neighborhood, in this depiction of what must be Russia, or somewhere over there, also reaching super cold temperatures. I mean, in a way, I'm really upset because all building and all outdoor projects will cease at my house for at least 5 months, half a year. And yet these people, with their horse and wagons, managed to build all of this? Roads, bridges going over rivers, unnecessary buildings like this one in the foreground? I don't know, maybe it's necessary, but it seems pretty frivolous to me. Whatever it was, it could have been half the size. No, we need these big balls up here, just pushing the building to the limit. Can we stack more on top? Sir, there's already 2 balls on top. 1 more. Just a little much, if you ask me. A little much for these little house on the prairie people. These milk, cheese, and butter people. Some of my favorite staples, by the way. A few flies around. I should remind you that if there are flies annoying you, the weather is great. Sorry, I can't stop thinking of the arrival of winter. Here we have a photo from the Australian National University. Here's old Australia. Here we go. Skinny little corner building. Exactly what you would go build out in the bush. Or was everything else wiped out? Australia rendered a wasteland and just little pockets of survival like this remaining. I don't know. I mean, a great contrast to the prisoner narrative that's been hammered into all of us. Exiles sent to Australia sure seems like a little more than prisoner handiwork. I could be wrong. Remember those old movies where prisoners in striped uniforms were smashing up rocks? Basically making gravel by hand. I can't even believe where I am. Let me flash some pictures of my surroundings again just to show you where this video is being made from. How removed all of this seems to me, and yet not. For instance, everywhere I look around me, it looks like this part right here, this rubble. There's a lot to be said in this wasteland that I find myself in. There's a reason why they've made some of the most beautiful parts national parks, and as I've discovered in the last couple days, really fenced off the rest of it for the millions of acres out here. It's amazing how much of it is fenced or controlled. And in a way, I kind of feel like these guys out here, just finding myself in this post-apocalyptic landscape. Now, you could find this in cities, especially in this time period, or you can find it out in nature, everywhere. And if we needed any more proof, we have nature. Nature all throughout this world is very young. Bushes, greatest trees, mere bushes. There's no reason nature should be running so far behind to maybe 300 years of growth. And yet, what kind of world was this? Was this a computer having world? Or would computers have just seemed stupid? I mean, maybe these people went through the computer phase and the AI phase and it ran its course. Maybe that was their demise, like HAL in 2001. You'll remember in a past video I said this world is, yes, beyond the means of these people and their horse and carriages, but it was also beyond the needs of ordinary people like ourselves. Maybe you would disagree. I need this. Okay, but most of us don't need this. And that's why when we arrive, we demolish so much of it. So much is gone. We put big cheap advertisements on the side of buildings, covering up windows. This, in my opinion, is from another people. An excessive, somewhat frivolous people who are gone by the time these newcomers arrive. Ooh, the sun is so hot when it does its little return through the analema right before winter. It's a real cooker. Low in the sky, but super potent. Anyway, this is like an 1800s picture. And I don't know, we might see a couple dozen towers and spires. Wedding cakes. Like a bunch of wedding cakes throughout the city. The wedding city. Church bells ringing. People frolicking around. I don't know. Probably flying vehicles. Or, like I said in a past video, one of total oppression. People living in these wedding cakes. And other people toiling and suffering and providing for those in control. I don't know. There were many mixed feelings about that video, and frankly, it doesn't matter to us. I mean, if we want utopia, we must work on utopia. Is it possible? I don't know. It is nice to reminisce about the past, but is it really beneficial? Oh, Margaret, things used to be so great. Oh, put a sock in it, Gertrude. At least we have this park. There we go. Park in the ruins of the old world. I agree with Gertrude. Look at what these young girls are growing up in. Some brick Mayan ruins. And what were they told about these ruins? What do you think about these ruins? I think it was an ancient civilization. And we've just been recently planted here. Oh, that's an interesting theory. Really interesting how somebody has planted these two little bushes here. Are these little bushes? I don't know. And here we see what looks like an exciting game. Looks like this man is getting ready to bat with this paddle. This guy's gonna throw it. Perhaps they're inventing baseball on this day. In the ruins. How appropriate. Like some gladiators. Well dressed, just starting out, 30 feet below the ground, in brick ruins. Here we go. Nothing to see here. Hit the ball. Okay, I'm ready. Gladiator distractions. Keep your eye on the ball. Nothing to see here. Alright. How about some Civil W? Some crows have come to visit. I've almost considered whether there was perhaps a small old world stronghold left in the south. I mean, it's really interesting how we have such a different people to this day, different mannerisms, disposition in the south in this early time period. I mean, all of this again happening in such a short window, as I mentioned before, 200-year window, and you have all these accents, all these ways of being. To this day, we still say Southern hospitality. Anyway, I don't think people, certainly a people with cannons, could create the ruins and the destruction that we see. I just don't. I think that this is the aftermath of some greater cyclical cataclysm. However, I'm open to consider again that a small stronghold may have still been in place, may have survived the reset. I mean, no doubt this is the case with the native people all throughout the realm, survivors, as Sylvie titled her series. She titled it Survivors of Atlantis, if I'm correct. It doesn't matter what you call this past people. Tartaria, Atlantis, Rome. We have a very jumbled history. The timeline is completely off. But what we have is hard evidence that we can go out and see and touch, and we have an official narrative, give or take a couple hundred years, when we're dealing with North America and many other parts of the realm. And back to where I am in the desert, it reminds us of the cyclical nature of these resets. And going back to India, how I started off the video saying old tech and a past civilization is nothing unusual to them. And all native people, again, nothing unusual to them. To consider the idea that there was a great civilization before ours. And really, I think it comes down to the land, just like it does today. You don't have a great civilization if you don't have access to land. And I think when people look back at this time, this experiment, one day, they'll realize that this is what destroyed the nation. I'm sitting out here surrounded by millions and millions of acres and miles of land, and it's owned by the federales. They could free up a few thousand acres, and that would drive the price or the cost of living and housing down. And they don't want to do that. The whole objective from the get-go was to drive up the cost of living in every sector, keeping wages low to where they'll bring in a new people that are willing to work for those low wages and continue paying the artificially inflated costs of living. It's just a big business, and that's why we're kept in the dark about everything. If history doesn't suit the interests of the business, then it's left out. And I think that's the reason they don't tell us about this, or anything really, anything serious. They would tell us about all the artificial threats, keep us in this state of panic, but anything serious, like the bigger picture, would not serve the business. If you understood, you wouldn't do a lot of the things that you do that serve them. You might find yourself in the middle of the desert, talking to yourself. So that is my cue. Enough of me. Thank you all for joining me this week. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you soon.